And we are live once again here on the YouTube's Maker That Money, the podcast, where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby. I am Pooch of Repkord. With me this morning, as always, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop, King of the Empire Sticky. Andrew, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and we are in the presence of greatness, as always, with my close friend, confidant, my moral Sherpa, Mr. Joel Telling. I don't know what a moral Sherpa is, but
I don't know what a moral Sherpa is. But that's fantastic.
just like
I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt, man.
Yeah, do it. Joel,
Moral
how
Sherpa.
are you, my friend? Thank you for joining
morning.
us.
Thanks for having me.
For those in Radio Land who are listening back after the fact, we do this stream every 9 a.m. on just about every Friday on YouTube. So that's a great way to interact with us in the chat. We also have our little call-in. We are a call-in show, and we're gonna do some Ask Me Anything session with Joel in a little bit. When I say, guys, the lines are open and operators are standing by, then we're gonna start doing that. But we have to do introductions. We have to do the housekeeping first. We have to have Mike tell everybody to smash the like and subscribe buttons because we got to do CTAs, right? Important stuff. And we got to share our wins. So Joel, one of the things that we do, I'm going to have you introduce yourself in a sec, but while you're doing that, you're going to also have to be thinking about a win for the week, something that was good and positive that happened to you that you can share with everybody.
Sure.
So you're going to have like 20 seconds to come up with that. But first, please introduce yourself. Tell us, who are you? What do you do? Why should we care?
All right. Hey, my name's Joel Telling. I host 3D Printing Nerd. We air on YouTube. And it was originally a hobby back in the end of 2014, 2015 that grew into what is still a successful little business.
Successful is being humble, my friend. You're very humble. You have built quite a channel. You are the humblest. Yes. Very concise. That's a solid elevator pitch, which is critical for any business.
I think so.
The topic at hand today, guys, on the pod is the business of being a creator. And this is one that I've been excited to delve into for a long time. I don't think we think of YouTubers and people that have done that as business people necessarily, because it's still in the scope of business, kind of a newer genre. And I think a lot of people perhaps have maybe stumbled into it. Joel, when you were growing up, did you have visions of being an entrepreneur, a business person, a YouTuber, any of this stuff?
No, not even slightly. Well, and to your point, I think a lot of people view people on YouTube as businesses if they have 100 employees or some astronomical number of subscribers. But when you think about it, like MKBHD and Studio, you think of as a business. Linus Tech Tips and Linus Media Group, you think of it. But Dude Perfect and Markiplier, do you think of them as a business?
No,
not really, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So my beginnings, I've always been a fan of tech. Like ever since I was a little kid, I liked tech. And I liked taking things apart. I took a lot of electronics classes in high school. I built stuff out of cardboard and tape. I remember for Christmas one year, my parents just got me a massive amount of different tapes. And even to this day, that would be a fantastic Christmas gift.
That is a good gift. I
used to, as a kid, so I in my bedroom, I would take cardboard boxes and a knife and cut out doors and windows and trap doors and use tape to put them together, and then have string home run back to a certain location where I could manipulate the doors and the trap doors, or perhaps like a big entryway. Then I could pull my GI Joe Compass X30 out of the thing. It was a bunch of fun. It was, in essence, I mean, from a kid, I mean, maker's gonna make, right?
Maker's gonna make.
And so if you think about it, like I in hindsight, I probably was always destined for something
greatness,
creative. I don't know about greatness.
Great.
It's yet
Also
to be
creative,
determined.
but greatness too.
But
Yeah.
something creative where something was made, changed, or created. I did have my own startup company in software, and I've worked for a lot of different software companies. And so I
Mm-hmm.
made programs, I made functions, I made test harnesses.
Here's
I
a
always
man who's
liked
done it all.
tech stuff. And
Yeah.
so I always collected camera gear, audio gear. And so uh, before, in the before time, before my wife and I have kids, I was a bar photographer in Pioneer Square in Seattle.
Oh.
I would start work at 11 p.m. and shoot a couple hundred images of patrons at certain bars and clubs. Um, I remember for my local radio station, they had at the time one of their producers was name was Ben, and they called it Breaking Benjamin, the bit, not the band.
Ooh, I
And
do like
so
that band too. Yeah.
every on a morning they would do something like take a stuntman shot or walk across a sea of Lego or
Ooh.
something to that effect. Doing some sort of crazy stunt that could be relayed over radio, so the audio was good.
Yeah.
So what I would do is while they did that, I would film it. And then at night, I would produce an episode and then have it ready to air by the time they go live the next morning so they could talk about it again, but then direct people to look at what they were doing.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun.
That's
It was
okay. So this is good. This tees it up nicely. This sets the stage well. Okay, I always love a good origin story. We get a sense of who Joel is and what he is. So let's pause there for a moment. Let's take a moment to share some wins because we're all about harnessing that good energy and blocking out the bad, as I like to say. Joel, are you ready to lead off? Think about something from this last week that was just a good, positive win that you want to share with the people.
Oh, I've got a great win.
Let's hear it.
I've got an episode coming out next week, and in it, I had to design something that supported a weight at the end of a distance while it was connected to something else. I don't want to give away too much.
Okay.
But utilizing different materials, different extrusion widths, and certain print settings, I was able to get it so it supported the weight even at speed. And so I'll get to talk more about that next week.
Awesome.
Next week. But it was really cool. That was a super win. Like it was last night at 11 p.m. It was like upper 30s outside.
Ooh.
And I had to test it going
Risk.
at speed, and I got cold, but it was worth it. And I remember I fist pumped the sky.
Oh,
because I
you
was
even
so happy.
that's a good indicator. If you get a
Wow.
fist pump,
Oh yeah,
that's a win.
yeah.
That
when you're
is
like,
a win.
Yeah.
Andrew,
go.
give us a win on your
Oh
front.
gosh. Well, this week it has been, I think, fantastic all around. Too many wins to count, and I'm not trying to brag. It's just
Jeez, man.
it's been great.
He's on
so
cloud
this
9,
week-
cloud 10 even.
Yeah, this week, we actually, as a business, 3D Gloop, we've been growing. But this week, kind of, we said that it kind of ticked over into that next level. We achieved one of our KPIs, key performance indicators that we had set a long time ago. And what's even more exciting is that we had the highest revenue day in the company's history. And it's actually pretty funny because it
setting records.
finally beat a record that this man Joel over here actually set for us back
Joel's
in 2018 when we launched.
Joel's been dethroned though.
He's been dethroned.
Or the
I
gauntlet has
welcome
been-
it. This is fantastic news.
That's-
Is it when we did
Yes.
my wife and I hung from the swing set with the piece?
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Yep.
that's fantastic, man. Congratulations on that. That's great.
Yeah.
If you haven't already, if you're in the chat, first of all, shout out everybody in the chat. I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of familiar handles out there. Thank you for joining us as always. I see some new faces, so welcome to our tidy little podcast here. We're glad to see you. We do this every Friday at 9 a.m. on the YouTubes, but you can listen back on all the major podcasting platforms if you're, like me and you like to listen to things while you're working as well. It's a good way to do it. Share your win in the chat, and maybe we'll read some of them. For mine, I'm just going to say I'm really excited. We picked up a new reseller this week. I'm really excited about it. We need to kind of sign on the dotted line, so I'm not going to say exactly what, and I don't want to jinx anything. But that's a really good win.
That's
Because
awesome.
anytime we get more reach and more brand recognition and out to places and corners of the world that we haven't seen, like, that's just always a great thing. So I'm happy about that. I'll take that as my win.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. A little
Good
round
job.
of a thank you, brother.
Good
I
job.
appreciate you for that. That's nice. It's been a road, but we're very happy, and hopefully we're gonna challenge our production line with it, and we'll see how it goes.
Awesome.
All right, shall we get into the meat and potatoes? What I want to do, we're going to do this a little bit different, guys, this morning. I want to maximize the amount of time, so please feel free to throw questions, and we are watching the chat. I apologize if we don't get to everybody's questions. We've got some that were submitted to Twitter ahead of time. We will take a couple calls in a little bit here as well. If you want to actually call in and talk to Joel, we welcome that. So I want to maximize the amount of time we have available for that. But the topic at hand this morning, the content creator business.
Mhm.
So Joel started off by telling us kind of his background and all this stuff, but said, hey, I never planned for it to be like a business. I think, Joel, you, like many of us, I would say, stumbled into the world of entrepreneurship and business stuff, and very much learning as you go. Well, how hard can it be to figure out how to set up a bank account, how to get a tax ID number, all of that stuff. And I know I'm sure it's not the first thing you were excited to do or whatever, but at some point, I want you to think back for a second to that crossover point where you're like, oh wait, now I've actually got to get an accountant, or I actually have to set up the bank account, or I actually have to do this on the up and up. When was that again? And was that a drag for you? How has the transition been from, doing all your other things and doing your channel part-time to actually like, okay, this is how I make my money now?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So at the very beginning, I was working at Adobe on the After Effects team. And across from me, my coworker, Mitch, he worked on the Premiere team. He had worked there for like 20 years. And I remember I had thought, I'm enjoying 3D printing. I had my 3D printer, my first one, Christmas of 2014. From there, I used Photoshop's 3D engine to design cookie cutters that I sold on Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point down the road, I thought, I want to teach people about what I'm doing. It actually was a GoPro camera rig that I modeled in OpenSCAD, and it was fantastic. And I wanted to kind of show people. So at Adobe, I remember on YouTube, I created my channel, and I wanted 3D printing in the name. And for a long time, I volunteered for something called the Nerd Machines Nerd HQ at San Diego Comic-Con. It was a Zach Levi led thing. They worked with Operation Smile. And so technically I was a volunteer for Operation Smile, who then provided the volunteers for them to do this Comic-Con offsite. Okay. Like I was the green room. I ran the green room, and I was the stage manager. So I got to meet a bunch of people. It was a bunch of fun, but we were nerds. So I was like, 3D printing nerd. This sounds great. And so I started a channel called 3D Printing Nerd.
That's how the name came about.
I remember, I got my first subscriber. It was one of my friends, but I remember walking over to my friend Mitch's office, and I was like, dude, I got my first subscriber.
You remember subscriber one. That's incredible.
I think it was my friend Stuart. So that's kind of where it started. I wanted to talk about the model in the OpenSCAD and kind of how I did it. The video did well, and so I put out another one, and then that video did okay. By well, I mean someone watched it. But then the second one, got watched. The third one got watched. I remember. So if we're talking about the business of it, so that was, I want to say, June of 2015 when the channel was started. At one point, I got to I was like, I need to kind of think of this like a business. YouTube, I hit the subscriber number to be a YouTube partner, and money was going to start coming in from YouTube, and I didn't want that to commingle with my paycheck from Adobe and our personal finances. The idea was, just for the sake of keeping everything separate, I wanted to have my own account that this went into.
Okay.
Because through Adobe's paycheck, I was self-sufficient, and so I wanted to keep that money separate because I didn't want it to mingle with my personal money, but also if I needed to buy anything that went on the channel, I would utilize money that the channel had made if I could. So I reached out to Matt, who still owned Printed Solid at the time, and I said, "Who's your business guy? Because I need to get an EIN." And so he forwarded me to the guy, and through Delaware, I registered as a corporation, and 3D Printing Nerd was born. I got
legit.
my EIN.
Yeah.
And then I went to Chase Bank, a one that was next to the Adobe offices, and I took my EIN and I opened up my business account. So then I had my registered business. I had an EIN, so I was federally recognized.
Taxpayer identification number for those of you not in the US.
Personally, you've got your social security number. Businesses have an employment identification number or something like that.
Right.
So I took that one to Chase Bank, registered for business savings, business checking, and then now that I had a corporation, where I had an LLC with an EIN and a business checking and savings account, I then took that information and put it into YouTube and said, anytime there is a payment generated every month for the partner program, it goes into this account.
And so that's the so anybody that starts to get into actually doing, if you want to make money or start get paid by YouTube, everybody has to do this type of process. So they kind of guide you.
Everyone doesn't have to have an EIN, and everyone doesn't have to have a business account. Like I could have put in my social security number, and I could have put in my personal banking details, and YouTube would have paid it out, and then it would have just been 1099 income to my personal area. But the goal was, because remember, I still had a full-time job that paid fairly well. I mean, I was a software developer, so I wanted that to exist, and then I wanted this to exist on its own. And so this to start, like anybody who's wanting to start this thing, if you can keep the money separate, I think that's a great way to start, because then things aren't muddy. You know how much is coming in, and you know how much is going out if you need to buy something, and it's way easier to manage from ground zero.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's a good baseline. Look at this. We got our first caller. Are you ready to take a caller here, Joel? We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what happens when we open this up to the world. Okay, let's see. All right. Hey, you're on Maker That Money here with Joel Telling this morning. Can you give us your name and what your question for Joel is?
Hey, this is Jay. Joel, I'm a big fan of your channel, and I'm starting out a YouTube channel kind of centered around 3D printing. I was wondering if you just had some advice. I really like comics and video games. How could I turn that into like a business?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. And I love that you brought this up, because if in 2023, saying you're going to start a channel around 3D printing, there's quite a few more now than there were back in 2015 when I started. So you have to find your own niche. And saying you like comic books, and that's great. Find a way to get that into any of the videos that you make, whether it's how you film and the style, or whether it's how you're presenting the story of each video, or whether it's inspiring the things that you print. I think you have a wonderful road ahead of you if you can just kind of weave in the tenets into your videos as you go along, and so you'll have 3D printing and the things that you enjoy.
Cool. So Jay, you already have a channel, or you're thinking about starting a channel?
Technically, I've had a channel since 2006.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're looking to take it to the next level, then maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like, well, first of all, where are you calling from?
Canada.
Oh, all right. All right. Good on you. And so you already have some videos out there. Anything we might have seen, or?
Maybe we've gotten a few views on some of the videos.
Okay. All right. Good. Building it up. I mean, that's great. Your passion is in comics, and you've done some 3D printing. That's good. What do you feel like? I think Joel's got some great advice. It's got to be a tough thing to get into in this day and age. But what kind of challenges do you feel like you want to start trying to tackle first?
Well, I've got a pretty big team now, and that's kind of changed the game a little bit from the days when I was in my garage.
Oh, you have a team?
Yeah, we've got about 22 people.
You have I'm sorry, did you say 22?
Yeah.
22 people. Wait, so and like, how big is your channel? Like, what kind of subscriber numbers are we talking here?
I think we're at 13.2.
13.2 people?
Hi, James.
How's it going, Joe?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I
love it. Like, when I heard your voice at the very beginning, I was like, no way. No way. Hey, my advice is still great.
It is still really good advice. For those of you who may not know, we are in the presence of multiple greatness this morning. Mr. James Hobson, aka the Hacksmith, on YouTube. A very small YouTube channel. You may or may not have heard of him. He's done some work with some lightsabers and some hammers and some walking robots and power loaders and whatnot. But man, thank you so much for joining. Hey guys, I got to tell you something. A little birdie told me a secret. Today is the James's birthday. Did you know that?
What?
So
You're three.
So the big 3-3. Now, what's interesting about that, James, and I know he is very gracious for joining us because A, it's his birthday, and B, I know he's got a company. He said he has a meeting coming up, so we don't have a whole lot of time, But I wanted to give Joel an opportunity to ask maybe some questions of an inspiration of his as well, and we've got a question for you. But before we do that, I think we'd be remiss if we did not just take 10 seconds here to just headbang a solid happy birthday wish to Mr. James Hobson, the Hacksmith. Birthday to the Hacksmith. Happy birthday to
You're enjoying that quite a bit, Food.
There it is.
He's jamming out.
That was it. That was fun, huh? James, I really quick, I got to tell you something, man. This is interesting. I was looking on your back catalog, and your oldest video is like 16 years old now, which means like half of your life effectively has been on YouTube. Is that like, how does that feel to you? Is that just a trip to look at like where you were and where you are?
I knew that was coming up, but I forgot that's this year. Yeah, because I started posting 2006, April 20th. So I was 16 at the time.
Seems like forever, doesn't it?
I'm 33, 20. Oh, I guess next year will be. Wait, no, 16, 30. Oh, I'm already over the halfway point. That was last year. Shoot. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I remember even just after about 3 years of running the channel full time, I was just like, I've already worked for myself longer than I've worked for a company, because I only have like 3 years work experience as a regular engineer at 2 different companies, about 1.5 years each. And
so this is your longest running job then, yeah?
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. I've been cleaning out and organizing the garage because I'm throwing a big party tonight. And just cleaning up the garage, I was like reminiscing. I'm like, damn, we used to do everything in here. And there is a big part of me that misses that, because like it was like just hanging out with friends, making cool stuff.
Right.
Having the huge business and the huge facility, it definitely changes the game a lot. But I'm starting to find joy in it again, because it's just like I have this awesome facility. I'm really trying to start living that eccentric tech CEO life that I kind of dreamed about since I was a kid.
He's a real life Tony Stark, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
he really is.
And like, I might move into this facility at some point. Like, it's got everything I want. Like, we're building up a big company gym soon. We've got showers. We've got kitchen. We've got the company chef. Like,
oh my god,
it's been pretty cool.
I will wait. You're throwing a party tonight? Okay, I will book my flight and at the airport.
Yeah.
Right.
Our invites got lost in the mail somehow, I'm assuming. So we'll just send the jet, and we'll be there in no time. Listen, man. So I'm going to ask you the same thing that I asked Joel. If you're thinking back, because this podcast is talking about turning your hobby into your jobby. And I imagine for you, you had a very similar path where when you go back to 16 years ago, you know, James, and think about it and stuff, like there's no way you could have had any vision of it being the size. He's referring, like, he's in a new facility now. He calls it the Herc. It's an amazing campus. They've done tons of work. If you guys do not know the Hacksmith and you're listening back on the pod later, please go look him up. His channel is incredible. He's done just some amazing stuff. He's done TED Talks. He's done the whole thing. He's lived a lot of life in 33 years, and we are honored to have him. But James, thinking back to that point where you crossed over, where you said, like, oh, we're just making videos, it's fun. I'm with my best friend, and we're just sitting next to each other, to the point where you're like, oh, this is a business now. This is like. And what was that transition like for you, and how has that growth felt over? Because I know it's never, there's ebbs and flows and stuff. Can you talk about those feels?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, because basically when it was all in the garage, we got up to, I think, 9 employees while still in the garage.
Jeez.
Which was pretty tight. Like, me and Ian my business partner Ian, we worked in an office smaller than this together. And I was just literally reminiscing last night. I was just like, holy shit, like, we used to work like side by side, like constant communication, whether we were editing videos, engineering, planning things, responding to sponsors. And now, like, his office is like 50 steps away. And it's just like, it's completely different. So I think there's nothing wrong with turning your hobby into a business, but you have to be very conscious of what you actually want out of it. And I think when we made that transition from the garage to the first facility, that was over 10 times the size, 13,000 square feet. That was a big change. And that really made it feel more like a business. It made it feel more corporate. And the thing is, as you grow, everything just gets more complicated to do. When you're nice and small, you can wear all the hats because it's a small team, and ultimately it's your hobby, and you do whatever. But when you grow it too much, you start having to give away those hats. And sometimes you give away the hat that you actually enjoyed wearing the most, and now you've kind of lost some of the passion. I use a quote from MHKB that just, like, it's such a good metaphor. He says, being a YouTuber is like being an octopus. You've got 8 tentacles. Maybe one's holding a camera, one's 3D printing, one's planning things, one's talking to sponsors, one's scripting, etc. When you grow your company, you effectively have to cut off your own tentacles and hand them to someone else. And then they get to operate the fleshy tentacle, doing the job. This is the part where it comes fun. So I've never actually, like, vetted this information, so I'm assuming it's true. But apparently, octopi have 3 hearts. And the issue is those 3 hearts are actually in some of their limbs. So now, if you think about it that way, what happens if you cut off the 3 limbs that had your heart?
Yeah.
Now you still have to do 5 things at once that are not your favorite things to do. So keeping in mind what parts of your hobby or the business that you actually love doing, and making sure you don't give those up. Because as soon as you give those up, it's a slippery slope to too much working, burnout, you name it. And I've been there, and I'm trying to, like, get back to doing what I like. So for example, at Herc, the one thing I realized at the last facility is, yeah, if you teleported back to 2006 and you told past me, you're going to have this massive facility with every tool you need to make whatever you want, I think it would be a dream come true. But when I was actually at that facility, some of them were actually like the worst years of my life, because I had given up a lot of those passions in exchange for the business. And the biggest thing I realized was, even though I had the big facility, because I was running a business, I couldn't just go and work on whatever I wanted when I felt like it, because there were people using those machines. The 3D printers were busy, you name it. So one of the things that I made a priority now at Herc is I earmarked a room, and it's almost as big as the original garage. And I'm setting that up basically as my private workshop, kind of like Adam Savage's cave.
I love that.
And
I love that.
I'm putting all the equipment I can fit in there, small scale versions of everything. So I can do any kind of prototyping, from welding, CNC machining, 3D printing, laser engraving, laser cutting, electronic, name it. I can do small stuff in there with anything I want. If I need like a bigger thing made, I can walk out to the main shop. But the important thing is that lab, I'm able to go in there at 2 a.m. if I want and do whatever I want, because it's my space.
That's
and one of the things I'm doing in there also, the other big thing I notice is, especially with YouTube, if you grow the team, you end up, now you got video people, now you got other people editing videos. I kind of miss editing videos, to be honest. Like, it's fun.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that either.
And I even enjoy filming. It's just usually hard to film yourself. So like, I'll film other people doing cool things. When I was in the garage, I was doing it all. I threw a camera on a tripod and then I started making. So what I'm doing in this lab is I'm actually outfitting the entire lab with 15 cameras, all set up at every single. So there's no friction in the making process. All the equipment is ready to go, and I can film whatever I want, worry about editing it later, but have everything. So it's actually the cameras I'm using.
I was gonna say he's got tracking on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So these are little Insta360 Link webcams.
Oh,
They're
cool.
actually a 1/2-inch sensor, 4K 30 or 1080 60, and they have basic tracking on them as well.
That's amazing.
So I actually reached out and they gave me 15 of these, which I'm going to outfit the
Good
lab
sponsor
with.
plug right there. Nice. Okay.
And you can do a few different hand signals for the base AI on here to do different kinds of tracking. You can make it zoom in, zoom out. The mics on it are really good. That's the mic I'm using right now.
Really?
I'm not using a fancy
That's
mic.
decent. That's really decent.
Yeah.
And one of the cool features of this is they come with these little QR code stickers, and it has this mode called whiteboard mode. So basically, I can put 4 stickers in a rectangle, and if I do a hand signal, it'll actually zoom in to that rectangle.
That's great.
So in a practical application, if I'm working on something on the table, I can be talking to the camera, do a hand signal, and then the camera will look down to my hands and what I'm working on. So I'm really excited.
Super handy.
My
Jeez.
God.
That's so neat.
He's like next. This man
Don't
is
tell my
living in the
video
future.
editor, basically, the AI is taking over.
So you don't have to stop what you're doing and walk behind the camera and adjust it and set focus and get ready and go back and make sure you're in scene.
And then you run the whole thing on OBS with the app on your phone, and literally you switch to the camera you want when you're walking around. I might even try to automate it even further, where as soon as I walk into the frame, it starts filming.
Well, geez, I hope your team isn't sweating too much. So basically, James is saying he doesn't need you guys anymore. He's figured it all out. Joel, I want to give you an opportunity before James has got to go here really quick. Seeing where he is and where he's grown to. And first of all, you didn't really talk about the size of your team, because tell us where you are. And can you imagine growing to your channel to that place? Like, doesn't that just still seem so far away potential? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't to you.
Doesn't. So I love what James has said, and I love hearing about the size of the team, because I've got David producer and we have an editor that we use. So there's 3 of us who are all remote, but what we're doing, I would imagine James has this problem as well. You just need to envision it at scale. And honestly, if I 10x'd my space or my belongings or my team, there would still, like the end result is just more and better content, I would believe. I know that it's easy to say that, but like David and I have talked about a lot of what we would do at scale. Like if an influx came in, was like, you can hire 10 people now, what are you going to do? It's like we got plans for every single one of them. So but James, I wanted to ask something, because part of what made me hesitant to start as a full-time content creator was, you know, here in the States, we have to pay for our health insurance. And so I always said, I've always said, I have to, if I was going to do this full time, I have to make sure my kids can eat more than ramen, and I have to make sure the kids can see a doctor. And usually, people outside the U.S., especially in Europe, are like, you have to make sure your kids can see a doctor. What do you mean? And so I have to kind of explain the U.S. healthcare system. Yeah. Do you think you could have done what you did in the U.S.?
I think so. I mean, obviously, like, especially with that example, sometimes it's like, it's the luck of the draw. If I injured myself badly filming one of my first videos and I couldn't afford the healthcare to fix me, that would have definitely been an issue. But if we assumed I did everything I did here in the US, I think it would have been the exact same result.
Okay.
Even though I am Canadian, like, we work majorly with only US companies, US brands. We almost do zero business with Canadian brands.
Really?
Because the Canadian market is so much smaller. And since we have such a big audience too, everyone just cares about the American demographic. The few times that we have done Canadian ads, the budgets are like a fraction of what they are in the States.
Interesting. Okay.
Wow.
I
So
didn't even think about that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Given where you've come, and I, first of all, I have to tell you something. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty on the burnout, but you did a video a couple of weeks back talking about the content creator cycle and getting real about some of the psychological components of stuff and what it's been like to grow. And like I said, it's never a perfect, like, oh, if I just have more and we'll grow. I want to ask you, you said something that was really profound to me, where you just said you realized you were a shitty entrepreneur. And I had replied to you privately. I said, man, spoiler, we're all shitty entrepreneurs. We're all figuring it out as we go. I talked at the head of the show with Joel. It's like, when you started this thing, you didn't ever expect it to be a business. And so all of this is kind of, we're learning as we're going, right?
Yep.
And so what advice do you have to the public in general about, like, trying to find that right balance? Like, if you were to do it all over again, do you not scale as quickly? Do you just kind of be, more mindful, like keeping track of where your hearts are on your tentacles? What is it?
Definitely the tentacles, for sure.
Mind your tentacles.
But as far as like growth and scale, for us, it was a very first world problem.
Yeah.
We grew very rapidly in the first 4 years of our channel. We pretty much doubled in size year over year. So it's quite literally exponential growth for 4 years, which is a very first world problem to have. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But it also forced us to really we didn't have time to plan things or second guess stuff. We kind of just had to keep running while like the iron was hot. If you had a bit of a slower growth, you'd be able to take a bit more time and think about your tentacles and think about how you actually want to scale your business. So I feel like a lot of people won't have the problem of exponential growth, which again, it's a great problem to have, but on the normal course of a business, that's kind of unusual. Like that kind of early on growth where you're just like, whoa, everything's changed. For me, the big thing that if I could go back in time and change is we kind of just hired people because we had to. We're like, oh, we need to do more.
Yeah.
But because I'm the Hacksmith, and the channel was the Hacksmith.
Yeah.
Everything still centered around me, which was fine for the most part because I feel like I'm a pretty competent maker. But I was still the bottleneck at that point. So when I look at YouTube businesses, I like to use of Linus Tech Tips as an example of someone who's done a really good job scaling. Because when he started growing his team, it was very specific. Okay, I'm hiring a new video guy and a new writer. And that means those two people are responsible for 1 or 2 new videos per week. So as he scaled the team, he scaled his output. When we scaled our team, we never scaled our output.
Interesting.
Which is okay if you're in the middle of exponential growth and everything's just gravy and it's just like, oh, we're getting lots of views, who cares? But then when you realize that that's not going to last forever, now you've created this very, very, very expensive machine to run, outputting the same amount of content you did when it was just you. And now it means, like, the thing that boggles my mind so much now is when we were in the garage, we'd worry about spending a few $1,000s on a project. Like that was a big deal.
Right.
Today, if I had to guess, I would say less than 5% of our budget goes towards like project materials and supplies.
Wow.
People are expensive.
Yeah.
People are very expensive. Salaries are very expensive. And with YouTube, unless we're making videos, those expenses don't go away.
Yeah. So your overhead shot up incredibly.
Like crazy.
And
we did have, like, in 2020 and 2021, we had some great years. During the pandemic, lots of people were watching online and our views were at an all-time high. We did our lightsaber video, which has over 40 million views now. But now that we're kind of settling back in to this like post-pandemic period of the world, we're noticing that our average views are a lot less than they used to be, which is a tricky thing to manage, especially when you have this expensive machine that didn't get any cheaper to run, and now your output is the same. So one of the little setbacks we had last year was we tried changing our strategy. We were hoping to be a bit more like a Mark Rober style channel where we only released a video like once a month or so.
Okay.
But we made it a really good video. And the thing that personally bugs me about YouTube is sometimes you can make a really good video and it's still not going to get the views you expect.
You never know what's going to hook. Yeah.
So the problem for us last year was we transitioned to that and we tried making better videos and we didn't really see the views to match it. And whether or not we just had to do that experiment longer, the problem was we went from weekly videos to monthly videos, which is essentially making a 75% cut to your income if that one video doesn't perform as good as 4 videos did.
Yeah.
Wow.
And between moving to the facility, like last year was just a clusterfuck. It was not a fun year. Now that we're in a Herc, we're starting to try and ramp up content again, hopefully getting up to like 2 videos a month, maybe 3, hopefully up to 4. But again, focusing on getting this machine working more efficiently, producing more content. And that's the hope, that we can get to the point where we have the buddy system now. So one engineer goes with one editor and they work together on a project.
Wow.
And if this system starts to work, that's when we can actually scale it. If we can start, like, we've got our bar for quality, our bar for what a good video is. Now we could go hire a new engineer, a new editor, and now we've got an extra video. So we're a bit late to the game in properly scaling, but that's the hope. And then the extension of that hope is I get to come in here, throw throw up all my wonderful ideas
Idea barf. Yeah.
and then see them get created without actually lifting a finger myself. Then for the stuff I'm really passionate about,
He's in the lab with his
I can do that
tools.
in my lab.
Yeah.
Post videos when I feel like, not because I have to. Because the biggest fear was, what if the views keep going down? What if my leaving the channel starts sinking the channel?
Yeah.
Will I be able to fix my problems fast enough to come back and save the business? And that was a scary thought. It's just like,
Sure.
well, what if I am who our subscribers are watching for? So we're in that tricky part where we're really hoping that the team can start building up a following as well, and really we're putting more of the emphasis on Hacksmith Industries, not the Hacksmith.
Yeah.
So that's the goal of, if we can do that, then it'll be a much more fun business to run, and the possibilities will expand because you can do so much more with a team. And I love the idea of someday having teams of engineers in the skunk works where I can be like, I want a Batmobile. Team A, build me a Batmobile. Team B,
nice.
I want a Batman suit. Team C, turn me into a superhero. Let's go.
Oh, man. James, listen, we are so grateful to have you here and giving us, that is fantastic advice. So honestly, for any business, just to hear, like, as you grow, thinking about sustainability, you know, don't necessarily have all your eggs in one basket. Certainly don't, you know, when times will not always be as good. There's just so much, you know, meat on that bone to talk about. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I hope that you guys have gotten some kind of sense of some of the challenges and some of the behind the scenes things that are happening for these content creators. Because outwardly, what, you know, the public sees, they don't get any of that, right? Like, and so it's so neat to actually hear of those challenges. Listen, I know you got a birthday party. I know you got your meeting to get to. We've already gone way long with you. Thank you, my friend, so much for being here. We'll have to have you back at some point and check in with you. But I love talking about this stuff. Thank you.
You too, Joe.
And dude, party hard, okay? We'll happy birthday. We'll connect to see you.
Happy birthday, man.
All the maple syrup.
Oh, awesome. All right. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Keep on
Have a good
hacking.
one.
Bye. What a guy. How was that? At what point? I feel like I saw the point where it clicked over, Joel, for you. It was like, wait a minute,
The voice
Jay.
sounded
I'm like,
familiar.
I know this
The
voice.
voice was familiar the whole time. And Jay, Canada, I'm like, wait a minute.
The clues kind of kept coming in. It's like, we're like,
my advice still holds true because that's
good
what he
advice.
does.
Yep.
I love it. Like, we're at like 13.2 people, subscribers.
People.
He touched on
amazing.
some really great stuff, but
such good stuff.
It's interesting to think about because when he started his journey, he was 18-ish out of his garage, and
not even. He was like, he was
where
still a
he's
minor.
at now, what, he's 33?
Yeah.
I didn't start doing anything on YouTube with 3D Printing Nerd until I was, what, 38?
Yeah.
So I'm already 5 years older than he currently is before I even start doing stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And it gets a little bit more difficult because, and I spoke about this, the US healthcare system, I believe, inhibits small-time creators because if for some reason you are hurt, God forbid, catastrophically in an accident or something, that can wreck your whole life, your
changes
career.
the whole.
Absolutely.
It can do everything. And so not only that, I remember when I started, so when I left Adobe, I put out a video on this and I talked about it. I'm going full-time as a content creator. I specifically remember it was like 10:15 at night, and I walked in because I was essentially leading 2 full-time jobs. At Adobe, I was doing stuff, and then at night after my wife and kids went to bed, I was doing content creation. And I had to go see a neurologist because I was starting to forget words and I had constant headaches and like my brain was being taxed too much. And I know James talks about, mental health. He had to step away.
Yeah.
I was told by a neurologist that you need to quit your job. and he's not talking about content creation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then I remember at night, I went to my wife and I said, "Hey, Mick, I think I can quit my job. You know, the doctor's recommending it." And part of what I said earlier
I have a
about
doctor's
tucking all
note.
that money, tucking all of that money away,
Yeah.
I had a 6-month runway by
Okay.
that
That's
point. And
amazing.
that honestly is something that I wish more people were able to do. But I knew that at our current spend, without the kids having to just eat ramen, like I could still, the kids could eat and we could afford health insurance. If nothing came in, then at the end of 6 months, I would need to find a job. And
Mm.
so the idea was I put in a 12-day notice because it turns
Because 2
out
weeks
one
was
of the
too much.
reasons why is I had to go with Matter Hackers to an event.
Ah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
had to quit in time to go to this event.
I was
But
there. I remember
everybody
that.
at Adobe was
Yeah.
just like, "Man, we're going to miss you." Like they enjoyed working with me. I didn't necessarily enjoy the job as much as I enjoyed this one, but everybody was like, "I'm going to miss you." And so I had 6 months to work on it. And then I had another 6 months, and then, okay, let's see if we can go another year. Oh, okay, now let's go another year. And so it's just, it's really interesting to hear these stories about people who are going to full-time content creation. And
Yeah.
if you think about
Mm-hmm.
James and the Hacksmith, it's, I think there are certain times within YouTube's history that people could start and get an automatic boost. And
Yeah.
I think
Mm.
I think I was in the right place at the right
Right
time.
place, right
I think
time. Yeah.
I think that the content that is created on 3D Printing Nerd by myself and then with a team, it's bar none, it's high quality content, and there's always inspiration, and we're always trying to teach a little bit and just have a lot of fun. It's family friendly.
Yeah.
But I don't, if I were to start that today, I don't know if I would necessarily have found the same success with the same level of quality as
Right.
I did by starting earlier.
Right.
And so there's a little
Interesting.
bit of, right, it's not luck. What is it?
Mhm.
It's when preparedness meets opportunity. And
Correct.
so I think I
Mhm.
was lucky in that I was able to start my journey there. And the only reason I could, because here in the US, I had to have a runway to make sure my kids could see a doctor.
Well, and
Sure.
you mentioned, you know, the content creator piece, but that's actually true for any business in the US. It was a concern of mine as well, and I've been doing my own business for the past 20 years between this and my freelance gig before. And I remember having a moment when my son was born, my first child was born, where I was convinced, I was like, I'm gonna have to just get a job because I can't afford to pay for healthcare and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actively looking. So I had been freelance web developing for probably 2 or 3 years at that point, and I was like, well, that's it. But the phone kept ringing, kept doing stuff, and that was about the time Obamacare and some of that stuff came out, and so there were some decent options where there was some subsidy. It's not ideal as compared to other countries. But there are ways, so it's not impossible. It is something that is doable, but it's a very, very valid concern because one change in your health can be game over. Absolutely, and that's just such a hard jump for people to want to make, especially if you have a family. I feel for you, buddy, because it's like when you're getting in later in life as another thing, and you've always known having healthcare through your job and all that stuff, it feels very, very stressful to think about not having that.
Oh, sure.
Mhm.
Well, and then if you think about it, do you think, like, what does the future look like if healthcare in the US was different for small time business owners? Like,
It's a
Mhm.
great question.
are there certain inventions or discoveries that our timeline has missed out on because of this? Because
Absolutely.
if a 45-year-old married person with 3 kids has themselves a wonderful idea, but they can't execute because of the socio-political structure here in the country,
Yep.
are like, have we missed out on something? And so those are the things that I think about as a well, content creator, but also as a small business owner. It's like,
Mhm.
how do we mitigate these roadblocks to get the best ideas forward?
That's a
Sure.
fantastic point, and one that's very rarely part of the conversation. I mean, I know they talk about, the government wants to do things to encourage small business growth and whatnot, but I don't think we think of how healthcare actually impacts that the way that you're bringing up. I would really love to see more conversation in that space. That's a
I would too.
totally
I
awesome,
would too.
totally awesome point. Andrew, I want to give you an opportunity. And then I also, there was a great question from Vishal in the chat that I want to get to. I want to ask Joel. Joel, I want to check in with you. I know you said, I want to be respectful of your time as well. And I know we went along with James
I'm good.
and stuff too. So
I'm coffeed up,
you're
man.
good. You're coffeed up.
If anything, I'll just Uber Eats a cheeseburger if I'm real hungry.
That's good. And we can talk to the Uber guy when he gets there too. Andrew, why don't you? I know you had some fantastic questions when we were talking ahead of time. We got to make sure you get one of those out to Joel.
Let's
here.
do it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Pick your favorite.
Come on.
Yeah. So you were mentioning, Joel, earlier, about that transition period of saving up money, having roughly 6 months of runway, and then taking that leap. When you took that leap into doing this full time, what were you thinking about in terms of how do you start monetizing this platform that you've started creating?
Yeah.
And like, what are the ways in which you viewed as potential ways to make money? Like, from the outside, we all, like, as viewers, know that views equal money and rev share with ad spend and stuff. But I'm sure there are more opportunities as a creator to work with brands or companies. And so I'm curious to hear, like, in the early days, what were you thinking about? What were some of these things that you were trying to employ to make this leap, successful?
Great question. The major thing I remember very specifically after my last day at Adobe, I did have to go to an event, but I came home and I was like, I'm going to have so much more time to do this. Like, I'm going to be able to do so much more now that I don't have a job in my way. I can do things while it's sunny outside, while it's daylight.
Sure.
That was the first thing that came to mind. And in fact, I believe that year I put out, I think, over 260 videos.
Wow.
And that was me in this room. There was a camera right over here.
Wow.
I had my desk here. My G Max was at a table back there.
It's in my shop now. The original. I'm sorry. The original.
I got to come give it a hug.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to employ was just being able to do more, because in my mind, as one person making content, one of the easiest avenues to try and get more revenue is to make more content, because then you have more revenue opportunity. I then, of course, was able to commit to some things like going to places or events or visiting things in order to film that, and then talking with sponsors about either if I remember right, I didn't really do a lot of sponsored content within the videos itself. It was more, I would be compensated for trips. There wasn't a lot of in-video sponsorships back in 2015, 2016. It's a very different landscape now. The opportunity for revenue now is much greater for people who are content creators who create quality content.
Okay. That's awesome.
Did I answer your question?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. I mean,
I employed working more during daylight hours to produce more content. That was my my number one goal, and how I attempted to get more revenue via opportunity.
So let me follow up for you, if you don't mind, just to peel a couple more layers off that skin. So when you think about what Andrew's talking about, like other opportunities in terms of like revenue as you start to grow bigger, it reminds me of kind of like the professional sports analogy, I wonder, and maybe I'm completely off, so you tell me, Joel. Do you have the opportunity as you grow to make more money in sponsorships and like endorsement deal type stuff over the, ever making money on the sport itself, if that makes sense, if that analogy carries over?
Sure.
But is that's something where you got to pay some dues to get there to attract that level of sponsor?
Oh, absolutely. You have to build an audience. You do have to, as someone who creates content, if that is your business, you do have to run your business in a way to continue to gain an audience. And as you gain an audience, the value in your word goes up, which you can then talk to potential sponsors and advertisers and say, I have an addressable, loyal audience at this size, and I believe that some sort of mention within a video I make is worth this. Would you like to take a part of it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a really interesting point you're making now, and I think it actually kind of segues into this other question that I wanted to ask, and that is, again, you kind of mentioned, having that 6 months of runway, and taking it 6 months at a time or a year at a time, eventually as you grew. So were there revenue goals in line as you started thinking about this as a business, and how were those revenue goals kind of tied into, we call them key performance indicators? So,
I know KPI. I understand what a KPI is.
Okay.
Yeah, believe me, I've been there.
Well, mainly for the audience, in case.
So as a startup business owner, I'm not business savvy at all, and I have ideas, but I didn't have any financial KPIs to hit. My main goals were
no ramen,
provide money so that we can eat and see a doctor. That's it. That's it. Like every month, do we have enough to pay the bills? Yes. Great. Oh, there's still money in the account. Let's keep going. And that's
double down.
That was it. And it's difficult to run that way, but as I started out as a business of one person just doing, I wore all the hats before, but now I wore all the hats, and my hats were responsible for making sure other people could live. That's when it starts to get real. So there were no like, oh, by this time I want this much, by this time I want this much. I have far off goals. Like I would love $5 million in my account someday, and I'm not even close. Not even close. But it doesn't matter because that's a goal, and I'm working towards.
It's good to have a goal. Always have goals.
Okay.
Question really quick. Let me get a question in from the chat here because we've been very greedy with Jill's time. This is a question from Vishal, head of Sliceworks. Shout out Sliceworks.
Good dude.
Good
Super
dude.
good dude.
Super good dude. Question for Joel. What was the pivotal moment that you decided to go all in on content creation instead of the comfort job? You kind of talked about your transition from Adobe, but like, was there just like, was it that doctor's note? Was that the pivotal moment?
So in the before Adobe, I had my own startup company, and I enjoyed working for myself. We did incur debt from that because it was never funded. But it was still a joy. Like I remember we had a big square table, and the TV was on the wall. And at night, I remember sitting on the ground with my back against the couch, pulling up this table, have my laptop, a coffee or a Red Bull,
the whole
and
moment.
putting a movie on.
Yeah.
Just coding away, drinking my Red Bull and just watching movie. And it'd be 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I'd be like, whatever, right? Job needs to get done.
Yeah.
And so that pivotal moment for me when going to content creation was really at Adobe. I was a quality engineer, and I was responsible for coming up with a test harness to test which effects within After Effects could be run on the GPU versus the CPU, because sometimes the GPU would run things faster. And I'm not going to get into all of that, but it's like going to an artist and giving them all of the paint brushes and say, test this brush. So I had like After Effects is one of the most creative programs you can do for digital video.
Sure.
And I was responsible for making sure things ran slightly faster versus the GPU, the CPU. So that pivotal moment was I was in a job that was kind of boring, and I had the opportunity to go back to being responsible for myself, and I have revenue opportunity. And so it was the perfect storm. So when the doctor said you need to quit your job, and I had runway, I was like, that's it. This is it. Like, this is when we pull the trigger. And I sent the email to my boss, and that was
history.
I never slept better.
Well, that's a good point though. Like that's a validating feeling. If you know you slept better as a result of that decision, that means there was some weight there that you might not have even like
Lots
really fully understood. And it's only once it's lifted that you're like, I'm taking my life into my own hands again. And that is the entrepreneurial spirit in a nutshell. I think that the commonality that a lot of us have, it's like, I want to be responsible for my own destiny. And I think that's a powerful thing, and it's not for everyone, obviously, because there's a
Well,
lot
it's not
of
for
risk.
everyone, nor does
Yeah.
everybody have the same opportunity.
That's true. That's very true.
Sure.
We are coming from a place of privilege to begin with, just based on where we are born and all of that stuff. So we do
Well,
recognize.
sure, but I
that.
mean, I was very gifted or blessed, or I was privileged to have that runway to try something out.
Right.
Not everyone with a family gets the idea or the ability to try and pursue an idea
Right.
without having to tax themselves in ways that might be detrimental to their life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Should we do another question
Do
from
it.
the
Do
from
it.
the
Yeah,
chat?
come on,
Sure.
man.
This is a really good one, and it keys back into what you're talking about, your audience building. So this is from Maple Leaf Makers, I'm assuming in Canada. Question, started a channel less than a year ago, found a niche. They do Voron build guides. Fantastic time to be in the Voron
That's great.
space. And it's kept them busy and growing. It's hard to see a way to branch out, though, without alienating their native audience. Do you have any tips for that?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you have to do what 3D Maker Noob does and seek some discomfort. If you make content about Voron and Voron building, it could be that you set aside one day a week for a specific build, like Watch My Voron Go or Build Day. You can highlight specific models in the community that are contextually cool. Like if Cinderwing releases a new dragon, talk about how this Voron you created, and here are the specs, and you're going to print it in this specific material, and then you print it out. And then at the end, you have this really cool print and offer it to your audience. Say, leave a comment down below with your favorite whatever, and we'll pick a comment and send this out to you.
Yeah.
It's if you branch out to make slightly different content, sometimes most of the time your audience will come along. You don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But if it's wildly different, like you have to give them an incentive to want to try it out. You'll get some loyalty there for people coming over and saying, I like you and I want to see the content you make. But most of the time you have to kind of, give the carrot to kind of come over and watch it. And so,
or the
printing something on the Voron is still going to be tangential to the overall content goal. Having a giveaway is nice, and it's not just a giveaway channel. It's just you've printed a thing and you want to give it to someone, and then maybe bonus points if they make content about the thing that you just sent them. There's ways around that. Think of, in the grand scheme of your content ideas,
right,
pick a hyper focal point within it and expand that into a short story, like target 3 minutes, and just make something cool using this hyper incredible focal point. Like you could go into detail about a specific part of a Voron and why it's cool and how it's made and the specifics on why it does what it does. You can do prints from the Vorons. You could do a live stream for an hour a week, just hosting questions about Vorons. There's all sorts of opportunity. And I think it's just a matter of trying it. So if you try new content instead of old content, then if something doesn't perform as well mentally, that's going to give you a big hit, and you're going to want to go back. And so put in some extra effort to make a little bit of extra content per week or per month or whatever. Build that side little content and then just make it a regular thing.
That's great advice.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, first of all, you kind of got to think about, it goes back to your goal setting stuff, right, Joel? It's like, think about where what are you trying to do? Like, are you wanting to grow the channel? Are you where you want to be? And experiment. I would say, from my personal experience, and Andrew, maybe you have some feels on this too, that it's okay that your audience is going to change over time, no matter what you do, for things that are within and outside of your control. And I think you need to accept the fact that those are somewhat elements that you're not going to be able to control. And sometimes you're going to need to experiment, and maybe things work, maybe they don't. But as long as you keep trying, And there's a ton of different creative ways, as Joel's saying, to just like kind of fuse in some ancillary stuff, especially in the world of 3D printing. You know, you can get broader and talk about making in general. You know, if you were to all of a sudden just pivot over and start doing cooking videos without telling anybody, obviously that's like, wait, what the hell just
That's
happened?
pretty wildly different.
Unless you make the cooking utensils with the Voron, see?
There you go. There, tie it back in.
There you go.
Or start a second channel. I don't know. I mean, I think people do that, whether or not, you know, it's all a question of too, like what James was talking about, like where is your heart in the whole thing? Where's your passion? Like, are you getting burned out on just doing Voron stuff and you want to branch out because personally, you know, you have more to offer? There's a lot of questions I think that we would throw back at you, and it's hard in a one way thing. But that's a fantastic question and really good insight, Joel. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to help. What's next? More. Come on.
More. Well, so
I see a lot of
one,
questions coming in. Let's just go through them.
Sure.
Okay. Cool. You want
Go ahead, Andrew. No, you have one, and I'll pick another while you're doing that.
Sure. So, you know, kind of let's go back and touch on you know, as you were growing and you started realizing, hey, you know, I'm making a go at this, I'm turning this into a business. You mentioned, you know, having to, you know, approach sponsors, or, you know, sponsors would approach you. How do you go about trying to assign a value to yourself or your audience? Or what are some of the things that you're thinking through to try and, I guess, distill down ways in which you can monetize, again, this audience or platform that you've been building?
That's a really good question, because a lot of people, I don't think, realize their worth, like their time and their influence and the ability to have an audience. That's worth something. So in the before time, I just came up with some numbers on my own. And then when my producer David started working with me, he does the business side of things and talks to potential clients. And there's a different monetary value that comes there. I just I don't want to get into specific numbers, but I think it's safe to say value your time and aim high, because you can always negotiate down, but it's really difficult to climb back up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and so I think you actually hit on a really good point there. Is I think you identified a potential weakness of your own, and you brought in someone else to help with that. You know, is that kind of safe to us? You know, make that point.
It sort of. So I could always. I'm not afraid to talk to people, but it also, there's an image thing, because I don't want to say good cop, bad cop, but it's if I'm the host of the show and I talk to people, and then me has a different persona when talking to possible advertisers and sponsors and stuff, you can get a disconnect, because talking business with people, as you both know, some people don't like that. It turns them off.
That's such a challenge.
So what's really great about having my producer David is I get to maintain being a host of the show. I'm happy and bubbly. Well, I mean, I am in real life anyway. I mean, you guys, I know you guys. But David gets to talk money with people. Like, you know, we'll really have conversations, just him and I, to be able to talk about overarching goals and financials and stuff. But at the end of the day, like, David does the financials with the client, and having that abstraction maintains that level of friendship or niceness that I have with the client. So I can go in and high five and hug and do all that and be completely abstracted from the
maintain the
persona.
persona.
That's really smart. Client.
No, it's great. Really Does Tobin know he's the bad cop, or did?
Oh yeah, he knows. Absolutely.
And we loved it. We've had him on. If you're listening,
he does.
We've had him on.
He specifically does, and he loves it.
And my goodness, is that guy just brilliant in the way that he goes about it. It's amazing. What just having just different skill sets, and I hadn't even considered the persona piece of it as intensely as you have, Joel, but that's such a good point, because it's hard when they're like, wait a minute, why are you being such a hard ass when, you know, you're obviously just this nice dude on, you know, and
for people that can't do that, it takes nothing to create an alias. So when you're approaching as a small content creator or someone who's just starting out in the business, create an alias, pick a name you like, and just answer and forward emails like that way.
or have Chat GPT do it for you.
I mean, you could.
There you go.
Some guy made something called some guy I saw on TikTok made GPT Boss. He created different business personas
Yeah.
with predefined
Oh.
queries
Yeah.
that then answer questions you have, but via specific roles.
That's hilarious.
Like
That's
you could give some text to an expander person and say, "Hey, writer, could you expand this text for me?" And it'll then rewrite it, including the relevant points, but make it longer.
Yeah.
Huh.
Okay.
That's clever.
I've picked a great one. I'm gonna do what we're gonna call the STL Denise lightning round with you because she like submitted a
Oh my
ton of
goodness,
stuff.
yes. Do it.
This is gonna be more in depth. I'm gonna start with one that is gonna not necessarily be lightning round because I think there's some good stuff in here. She just asked it. What does your wife do for the business? If you can talk about, if you're comfortable talking about the personal aspect, does she help out behind the scenes, or does she just keep home fires burning, or all of it go?
Mickey's a homemaker, so she doesn't have a quote unquote job outside the house. She did run the print farm when I was doing a lot of selling with that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She'll also, if I'm away on a business trip, hey, can you check this printer for me? And she'll FaceTime me and check stuff. But that's it. Like if the print farm was running more 24/7, then I would consider it a job, and her job is to check it. Right now, not really advertising or trying to get print farm jobs. So it's like, well, then I'm just not gonna, we're not gonna worry about it. And we've got plenty of things going on at home that she takes care of. So
yeah.
Her job is mom and homemaker, and then helps with print farm or content creation when need be.
What do you, to follow up on that, what do you suppose, and I don't know if it's fair because she's not here to answer for herself, but a lot of people aren't in your boat. Like they might be younger, don't have family, they're not married, they don't have kids yet. Obviously that creates just a different dynamic for them than where you are. What do you suppose she would answer of, like, what's it like being married to a content creator?
It's a blessing and a curse is what I would imagine she would say.
Yeah.
Because I get to work from home.
So you're
but then
always
the curse
there.
is I'm always working
Sure.
from home.
Yeah. Good one. All right. So the lightning round now. You ready for this?
Okay. Yep.
I'm going to pepper you with a couple. Let's try to keep them short and sweet. So how do you spread the brand of 3D printing nerd?
How do I spread it? In person, I tell people what I do. Online, I utilize various social media networks to engage in positive ways with people.
Is TikTok worth it?
Yes, absolutely.
How about shorts?
Yep, 100%.
Do you have to be on all social media to grow as a content creator?
You don't, but you should investigate and research the communities you want to be a part of and the social media networks that they typically use.
What percentage of income is from rev share and ads, roughly?
Oh, geez. Again, I don't pay attention to that stuff, but I would say...
Well, David, maybe you can chime in if you have it on the chat.
10, 15%.
Okay. Have your revenue streams changed over time as you've transitioned from hobby to full-time career?
Yep, revenue streams have changed in that sponsorships and activations we try to get more of. And then I do utilize more types of content, such as vertical short format and live streaming as well. Whereas sometimes before those were just for fun, now they are a part of a product offering.
You don't miss a beat, dude. I mean, I guess it was just like zipped right through it, and and very well thought out given how quickly that is. I'm going to continue on with Grant's question here.
Do it.
When do you believe is a good move to start hiring people full time on a channel versus doing everything yourself?
Okay. Oh, that's a very great question, because a lot of people are used to doing things, and like James said, right? You have to cut off your heart and your arm and your tentacle, I guess.
Mind your tentacles.
Part of it is what to find whether or not you should hire someone. You should identify, like, you should come up with a specific job posting, not post it, but just, what would be the job description of someone you'd want to hire, and then what would it cost to hire that person. And then if someone else did that job, would you be able to manage them, help them, encourage them, and then would you have time left over for what you needed to do? So a lot of times, having to hire someone, it's not just, you don't just say, here's some money, person, go do this thing, right? It's unless it's a trusted person or you have a good idea, it's okay, here's money, now do this thing, now let me see what it looks like. Oh, now you should change it because we never do this or this, but we always do this. And so it's not managing, having to hire a person to take over some duties duty is great, but at the same time, it's you have to realize it's not just paying someone to do something. You then have to take on the role of a manager, and you have to allocate time towards making this new hire someone who's valuable. Now, again, it could be you hire someone and they are just brilliant right from the start, and you're like, this is great, and you just run and course correct along the way. But it could also be that you hire someone and it's a consistent struggle to get quality work, and so just like you have to know when to hire someone, you also have to know when to fire someone.
And for any business, I mean, this is something that I think we struggle with as well, that especially when you're coming in, I would argue that one of the hardest things about kind of falling into business is being a manager of people.
Falling into business. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. People don't realize how easy the pathway is to being a people manager. Like you get there real quick. And it's not always a good thing. Not everyone is built to be a people manager, and that's okay. As long as it's realized and mitigated.
And traditionally, I think a lot of us, well, until I can hire a general manager to manage all the other people I don't want to manage, and it just becomes this compounding potential. But at some point, if you have people, there is going to be some degree of management. It just depends. It just depends.
Initially, there's some degree of management, and the people that you want are the people that have a very short tail for how much management needs to happen to the person in their position. Because if it's a really long tail and you have to continually course correct over time, and it takes a lot of your time, then that's not a good hire for you.
It's a tough thing to be learning as you're going too, because you don't. People are very complicated things, and it's never the same thing with every person, right? And so a lot of it has to do with like learning how to deal with the idiosyncrasies of each persona that you may come across. You can be great at managing certain types of people. I know for me, like, it's been a good learning experience. It's felt painful. I generally, like Joel, I don't want the conflict. I'm a people pleaser. Like I find myself being like, I shouldn't have to say this, and that's irritating to me sometimes, because I feel like people should just inherently understand and get it, and not be mean to each other, and all the crap that comes with like managing a team sometimes. But it is very much a trial by fire, and even people that are probably seasoned managers would argue that you're constantly leveling up how to, tactics for managing certain types of people.
Right. Well, and when we're talking about managing and new hires, especially in my line of business, which is content creation, they directly affect your ability to create revenue, because they're directly affecting the product that is consumed. And so it's not like you're not hiring someone to just kind of clean up an area or to file your taxes or whatever. If it's someone who's directly responsible for some aspect of creating the content, then it's imperative that they're at the top of their game and willing to learn quick, or else your content suffers. And if views suffer, well, just like what James said, views went down, and he was at a pretty dark place. I'm really glad to have him back, but again, you don't want to get to that.
No,
and it's just something that you have to manage. And like we talked, not everybody's a manager.
No. Can you speak for a moment to the ebbs and the flows and the stressors that kind of you experience as a content creator?
Yeah. Well, part of my stress is because of my family. I love them dearly, but if my content suffers and my views suffer, then the potential for having less revenue is there, and it stresses me out, because we we live a certain way, and I would hate to have to cut out things. Like my kids should always be able to go out for the sports they want. We should be able to cook the things we'd like to cook, and all of that stuff. And so my main stressors are just making sure that what I do and what we do, make sure that's possible. Other stress, really in a creative job, the other main stressor is just having to be creative. And that comes along with taking external money and sponsorships, and it's a thing. But if you're not in the right mindset and you're being forced to do a creative thing, it's never going to be good, and it just creates more stress. And so you have to remember that even if you're having a really crappy day, you need to turn it around, because you're responsible for this, and you have to be in a good mindset to be properly creative.
That's such a good point. David in the chat saying that he is the source of all of your stress. I'm sure that is not the case, David. You bring a lot of value, obviously, too, which is, you're lucky to have such a good friend that you've been friends with for a long time, that you're close.
Well, and to be fair, he's bringing in the business stress. And so he's saying this person wants to run this sort of advertisement on this video, so you need to go make a 30, 60, 90-second integration. Like, you need to go film that. It's like, oh crap, okay, I'll do that. And so
interesting.
It's just the stress of making money, but on the creative side.
So that kind of leads to a question I'd like to ask is, how do you go about working through, like, what sort of sponsorship opportunities or deals that you are interested in taking? Is there like a formulaic thing, or is it just a feel good? I'm just curious.
So on the show, we don't take any crypto or NFT projects as sponsorships.
Okay.
Beyond that, most things are open game, as long as the requirement is met for the fees we have associated with certain sponsorship or integration lengths. Just like Tom Sandlanderer has taken coffee as a sponsorship. And it's great. Like the little vignettes he makes and talks about. I'm like, we've had Pete's sponsor us on the show.
Sure,
with the giveaways, and it's great. So we always try to vet the companies and projects that we'll take sponsorships with. As an example, there was a home security device company. I don't want to name the name, but a while ago, when they were scheduled to run an advertisement with us, it came out that some of their products were easily defeated from the outside with like a laser. And it was like, okay, I'm sorry, but because of the current situation, we cannot run the advertisement for your company at this time. And so it sucks to have to turn down money, but the goal is to always be authentic and caring for your audience. And you don't want to shovel them some sort of crypto scam. You want to either show them products that you believe in, or that you use yourself and can give an honest opinion on.
Or at least you don't not believe in. Yes.
Yeah.
The creatrix, Miss Britt, brings up a very good point that isn't exactly phrased as a question, but I will make it one. Forcing creativity is hard. And James talks about this earlier, where it's like, it's gotta suck when you feel like we got to get some content out. You are a very creative individual, my friend. So I don't know how much of a problem this is, but there have to be moments for you where you're just like, I don't want to make a video.
Let me set the stage for you. Please. It is 9 o'clock at night and something is due, and I've sort of put it off because mentally I'm like, this sucks. It's not forced creativity. I don't want to do it. But I have to get it done. So I drive to my studio and I turn on the lights. And then I have to set up camera A and get it all focused and white balanced, and then set up camera B and do that, and then plug in my external monitor, and then make sure I look good on camera, and then get my script ready and my points that I need to do in the outline. And so that friction, that's the friction that James talked about.
Yeah.
And I think removing the friction to force creativity will make it less stressful. So like for him, having these machines available in his private shop with 15 different cameras on him at any time, it removes some friction. There's still going to be some friction there, I guarantee it. But anytime that you can grease the skids to get into hitting record faster, you're going to take away some of that stress. And that's part of why having a studio is really great, because while I still do have to set up cameras, it's not like I have to clean up an area at home in order to film and put the dogs outside or tell my wife to keep them quiet. And that, and so it reduces some of the friction, but that forced creativity still there. If any friction that you can reduce in that process, and the faster you can get to hitting record, is wonderful.
Mayhall asks in the chat, how far out do you plan your videos? He understands bigger and longer take more than 10 minutes, but generally, what's the pacing?
Well, some videos, well, as an example, anything that's banner has to be planned out long in advance. Like our times with Neil Patrick Harris. David is talking with someone who talks, his assistant. And then sometimes
quite a game of telephone.
He cycles assistant, so he has to then update. And then there are schedules, and Neil has filming obligations, and then we talk with companies that then we work with for the project, and then we kind of circle it all together. So for some episodes, it is, or like our time in Malta, months and months in advance of pre-planning and pre-production happens for that. But other times, like as an example, Simplify 3D version 5.
Yeah.
I filmed that at 10 p.m. the night before it came out.
and as far as, so I'm assuming that means that your release schedule is somewhat fluid based on, we got to drop this now, and so stuff gets pushed, maybe.
Sort of. There is some fluidity, and a lot of times things are only locked into place when a sponsored piece of content comes up, either from a corporation or from an ad integration. But most of the time, if something comes up, like if something happens and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just printed this is awesome, or this model just came out, we need to feature it right now, we have the ability to move some things within the schedule. And because 3D Printing Nerd only airs once a week, we do have the ability to do off Friday. We release on Friday, so it could be that a video is released on a Wednesday or a Monday or a Tuesday, or a live stream happens. And so we try to lock things in as much as possible. But if something comes up, we do have the ability to be fairly fluid, and we always have the ability of adding a piece of content if push comes to shove.
Sense. Yeah. I'd also assume that you have the other platforms of social media in which you can share content and information through as well, right?
Sure. I share a lot of stuff through Twitter, but again, if YouTube is really the banner social network for showing video content for us.
Sure.
And I take advantage of YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, TikToks, and is that it? That might be it. So I mean, I take advantage of them, but when sponsorships come in, it's 9 times out of 10 it's for YouTube.
Okay.
Does that allow for a substantial, well, I don't know if it's substantial, but obviously I can understand you want to hedge. You need to be where people are and what's relevant. And so if, younger crowds are more on TikTok and stuff like that, you want to make sure you're in front of a bunch of different groups. But it sounds like there's a substantial difference in what kind of revenue you can expect from each of those channels or media versus, your bread and butter. Yeah.
Yeah, short form vertical video content, I'm always attempting to grow. Right. And it's easy enough for me to put out something just by myself and just let it go. So a YouTube short, Instagram reel, a TikTok, I can film those any time of the day. If I have just a quick idea, I do the editing on my iPhone and then I publish it. But anytime there's a major release to YouTube, then that has to be through David, myself. An editor usually is editing that one. There's a notes pass, and we make sure it's a produced piece of content.
Sure.
Whereas obviously a produced piece of content isn't always what does well on short form video. So you kind of curate the content and the presentation style for the network it's going on.
So, given the advent of just the direction of more short form vertical video content and stuff like that, that there are a lot of people getting started in the time of shorts now. YouTube is finally starting to monetize shorts and stuff like that. But give people a concept of like, and you've interacted with other creators as well that have been wildly successful in these formats in terms of viewership and brand establishment, but from a monetary standpoint, as I understand it, having 2 million subs on TikTok does not translate to a full-time job. Like, can you give people a sense of like what is really needed in order to like get to the point where does it have to be long form YouTube?
That's a really good question. It really depends. People can find some success in short form, like Ben, It's Boy in Space.
Yeah.
He has 4.4 million followers on TikTok.
Right.
He's made some money on TikTok, but through Facebook Reels and YouTube Shorts now, he's finding a much clearer revenue path. And then even on TikTok, even though TikTok itself isn't paying a lot, having a large audience anywhere still invites potential sponsorship opportunities. So I know he's done that as well.
Right.
It's really hard to speak on the other networks. Like I've got, I think 200,000 followers on TikTok, like 60 some odd thousand on Instagram. And then we're closing in on 600,000 on YouTube. So I do have a fairly decent addressable audience via multiple platforms. It's just a matter of making sure the content produced in a certain way gets to the proper platforms.
Yeah. And understanding as well that there is a lot of value in having an audience and a brand, but it doesn't always translate immediately to financial benefit.
Well, so that's where it gets really interesting, because the short form video content like TikTok, in all my time on TikTok, I believe I've made $350.
But that's a good perspective, because people would look and be like, how can that be?
That's 200,000 followers, but that was a lot of viral hits during certain times that paid, and live streams where people would give gifts. But yeah, like $350. It's really not that much.
Yeah. So is the concept of what even viral is, has that changed given especially the landscape like James was talking about in the COVID times and how much people are consuming this content? It feels like 1 million subscribers is not the value that it once was, given how many people are getting to that level.
It's really weird because right now, at least on YouTube, subscribers don't really mean nothing. Like I have 600,000 subscribers. Angus Maker's Muse just crossed 1 million.
Congrats Angus.
To him.
Wow.
Yeah.
But if you look at people's standard YouTube analytics, it's 25% or less of your audience comes from subscribers. So having that addressable audience doesn't really mean anything if they're not taking advantage of what you're showing. And so, especially now with YouTube, so discovery on these platforms, I'll just speak to YouTube right now. Shorts, it used to be they didn't pay much, but they were great for discovery because it was a quick path to the subscribe button. And so I like that when I did that Snow Ducky short, what was it, like a year or two ago?
Yeah.
I remember I had massive subscriber growth because people saw it, thought it was funny, and just hit a button on their screen, and all of a sudden they were subscribed. Now that didn't translate into revenue, and it didn't translate into extra views because subscribers just don't really mean much. And so I think for people like hearkening back to the business of content creation, I think you don't need to have massive subscriber numbers in order to have a loyal audience who loves to consume your content.
But there's a big but that I would add to that, in the sense that when you look at sponsors are very much looking at those metrics. Now, whether or not that's the same as it once was, because even to get in the door or have a conversation with a bigger sponsor, they're going to be like, you need to have 1 million. Like that's something that they're like, okay, this guy's legit. So again, what is it?
But that's a holdover. So these are these companies aren't catching up. It's just it's a constant. It is a very constant that companies will not catch up to the current digital trends. So you and I now, we know that subscribers don't mean as much as they used to, like watch time and viewership of videos within the same context are important to people. As an example, 3D Printing Nerd has very close to 600,000 subscribers. It's a great number to look at, but it doesn't really mean much. However, when we traveled to Formnext and produced 14 or 15 episodes from Formnext,
Yeah.
with all of those specific videos, those are booth visits at an industrial trade show.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that. Those videos together combined for more than 1 million views with an average watch time of over 8 minutes. So not only are we getting a million eyeballs on this content,
Yeah.
they are watching it for more than 8 minutes.
Which is
that's
fantastic.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so if someone comes at you and says, you have this many subscribers, we would like to pay you this, you can always counter with, well, contextually, these are the videos on the channel you want to pay attention to. This is the watch time for these videos. And look at that. These videos combined give you 500,000 views, and people stayed on them for 12 minutes at a time. And so you always want to try and educate and reframe to the people you're talking to, because they understand just historically what matters. And you're like, no, currently, here's what matters.
Right.
And this is why it's of value to you. And then they're like, oh.
And that is a phenomenal point, because we talk about, like, no matter what your business is, you always have to be selling to some extent. As much as you hate it or whatever, this is a way educating your customer. I know we don't always like to feel like we say we're selling, but that education of your customer, what you're talking about, those metrics, those aren't generally publicly available metrics either, right?
Right.
So unfortunately, they only have these like limited tools currently, and maybe there's some third-party systems that kind of give some better insight, but they're looking at those things because that's all they have as a get to the door conversation. And then you have to educate them in terms of like, no, actually, this is what really is going to drive what we consider success for a video. And that's changed over the years as
absolutely.
These platforms grow, as these become viable business entities. So it's wild, because you're having to like kind of learn mid evolution of the whole industry even.
Well, it gets here's where it gets cool, and I'm going to talk about 3D printing for a sec. Imagine that. But historically, 2015, 2016, it was Creality, Anycubic, JG Aurora. They would say, "Oh, hello, content creator. We would like to offer you this machine for review, and you get to keep it when you're done."
Right.
And during that time, it was because it was a lot of lower cost hardware from China trying to hit as many eyeballs as possible. That was accepted. All sorts of everyone under the sun did 3D printer reviews. And that then sort of created the review economy, because now even today you get messages from manufacturers who say, we have this new thing, we would love to provide it for you to test and review on your channel. And it's like, well, no, the review isn't offered like that, but we do have sponsorships and advertising segments available. And David's conversations with some of these people have turned into revenue opportunities, because they just came out with what they knew historically, and they realized, oh, wait a minute, there's time and energy going into this, and it's part of a marketing budget rather than just a machine coming in. I mean, machine reviews are always valuable, and people that do them are wonderful, but at the end of the day, you just have to do what's right for your channel. And a lot of times teaching these companies that the review economy isn't what it used to be is the right way to go about it.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I know, we said we were going long, and you know me, I could do this all day. Like I literally,
are there any other questions that we need to handle?
Let's
make sure. I want to make sure all the questions.
Should we give a
call on
should we give a last call? Should we give a last call?
Yeah, this is the last call.
It's so fascinating to me, like the nuance, like I said, the evolution of the content creator industry and all this stuff, and you're living it, like in progress, and what it's
living and creating
as you're like, as it's all written, as history is written. And it'll be wild if you stop and think about, like, if you're looking back on this in 10 years, 15 years time. Two questions for you too. Like, does it get weird thinking about as you get into your 50s, as you get older, to keep doing this? Like, where do you ultimately feel like this needs to go? Like,
Um,
have you gotten that far out mentally with it?
I think at whatever the end is, the end is a proliferation of 3D printing nerds all over the globe who I have inspired via the content that is made, who work in all of these jobs that didn't exist even a year ago today.
Yeah.
And it's just the end is the stories that were told that enabled the people to create the next industrial revolution to build all the things.
So are you at all, and this is weird, and maybe the answer is no, but like, are you at all worried about, and maybe worried isn't the right word, but thinking about legacy in terms of like, can 3D printing nerd exist? Can there be a handing off of the torch to
Mhm.
your son or somebody else at some point, or whatever? Like, or is that just weird? Have we even seen that precedented in this space where somebody has a channel? Like Mr. Beast talked about that. Like, when I die, like, should Kyle or whoever, be allowed to, still run the channel?
Well, I'm not at Mr. Beast's level.
No, I know, but
that,
you get the idea.
I think that David will say this too. We are all 3D printing nerds.
Yeah.
Like I started the channel 3D printing nerd, and I remember at the very beginning I would say, "Hey, it's Joel, the 3D printing nerd." But as we go on, the channel, I don't believe, can survive if I'm the only 3D printing nerd. And
Yeah.
so as time goes on, let's hope that other 3D printing nerds come up and exist,
Yeah.
and we're able to tell some really great stories together.
I love that. So are you talking about kind of
Yeah.
the formula, kind of like what Linus has done, where it's like you start talking about the media group, like it's like where you're actually thinking
I would love
about.
to. I've always said that I
Yeah.
think 3D printing nerd as a media group similar to Linus would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think that there's enough stories to tell. I think there's enough personalities within the industrial and the consumer side that people should know about.
Yeah.
I think that there's enough events that are happening, industrial, professional, and consumer, that people need a window into. And in order to tell all of, like, it's me, it's David, and it's an editor.
Mhm.
But in order to properly tell those stories and to get out the right amount of content per week, per month, and per year, then we need some more people that might need to be on camera, or that might need to be writers, or that
Yeah.
might need to be producers. And that's why I was saying early on, like, we've had conversations, and if a huge influx comes in, we know exactly what it's going to take to grow this model wider and taller and deeper.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a couple more. Of course, we
Do
did
it,
last
come
call.
on, let's answer these.
Okay,
man.
all right. I'll pepper you again.
Do it.
This is a good question from Mike. Never let the machines win. How does a 1 hour 42-minute live stream help? How does live streaming figure in as another tool in your toolbox?
Live stream is just another way to reach your audience in an interesting method. So long format video is great. That's what we excel at. Short content is great for quick, people scrolling on the toilet, I would imagine. Live content is a way of just, I love the ability of just hitting go on the camera and just stopping for a second, being like, hey, how's it going? Let's take a moment here. Let's have a lot of fun. Let's go on this path of discovery together. Because typically it's when I'm opening a box and pulling something out of the box and making it go. And I love that aspect because as far as analytics, I know live streams used to detract, and then people would have their second channels for live streams. Then it was okay. I think live streams right now are just a great way to help pepper the content offering on your channel. So super chats are always nice, and those come through in live streams.
Sure.
Live streams are great as a product offering, because we do have sponsored live streams on the channel. And when we have people that stay for long periods of time, or certain live streams where topics get 1,100, 1,500 people watching, then there's some actionable items there as a product. And so I enjoy the live stream. I love it when I've reduced the friction to be able to get it going, and cameras are all set up.
Yep.
And I hope I get to continue to keep doing, because they're just a bunch of fun.
Well said. DaVinci Resolve versus Premiere, which and why?
I use Premiere because historically it's what I've used. It's what I learned at Adobe. It's the cracked software that I ran, long before I worked for Adobe.
It still is. Did
No,
you?
it was. It
Oh,
was.
oh,
No,
please.
no, we're talking about we're talking about like Photoshop version 6, man.
Yeah,
Like,
man.
This is back when
OG.
things were in black and white.
Yeah.
DaVinci Resolve is great. We utilize that when I shoot raw content because like with the raw, like a Canon RAW or Blackmagic RAW, their color engine and the ability to handle that footage is fantastic. So then I do the color grading in DaVinci, and then I'll export graded files that the editor uses in Premiere.
How much of content is something we should do versus what you really want to do? Or let's talk about making something. That's from Dice 3D.
That's a good question. I want to make more content. I would love it. There's a lot of things that have to happen in order for me to be able to make more content, but I would love to be able to produce more content. I love the idea of getting more ideas out into the world and having more people look at that and hopefully be inspired by it. I think more content properly is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, properly being the tough thing to define. From Mayhall Tech, shout out Mayhall. What is the one piece of advice you'd give your younger self before this adventure, or advice that was given to you early in your career when you're time traveling?
This is easy, man.
That impacted you most. Yeah.
This is easy.
Easy.
Yeah, I've thought about this. I mean, many times over. If I could go back in time and tell myself anything, I would say, quit your job earlier.
Follow your happiness as quickly as you can.
I think that jobs are cool, but you're destined for more. And I think if you get into the mindset of not having to have a job and you can start doing things for yourself, I think you'll find you'll be able to get into your future faster.
I like that. Get to the future faster, says Joel. Yeah. How much caffeine do you regularly consume?
Usually, so my drink of choice is a quad Americano, which is 4 shots of espresso, hot water, and I do a pump of caramel sauce, not the syrup in the bottle, but the sauce, like what you put over ice cream. I do a pump of that, and then a little bit of heavy cream, and it's a wonderful thing. If I make my coffee at home, it's a pump of caramel, 2 drags from the machine, some hot water, and then a little bit of cream on top.
And I can validate that it is literally called the Joel. I've been to Joel's Cafe, and you can order.
You asked for a Joel, and they made it for you.
Yeah, I sure did.
And I used to drink a lot more Red Bull, like a lot more Red Bull. My Red Bull consumption and energy drink consumption has gone way down. Every once in a while, like at 3 or 4 o'clock, if I'm dragging a little bit, I'll have a Celsius. That's the new one I like. It's really tasty.
I've never even heard of that. Maple Leaf Makers again. Heard a lot of good advice today, but what about the things not to do? Tell people what to not do.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think that when starting out, it's important to explore and test and create, but don't be frivolous about it. Be very specific about what you should do. Don't just don't go buy a new shiny thing unless you have a plan for that new shiny thing and how you're going to use that new shiny thing. A lot of content creators fall into the trap of getting the latest camera gear.
Oh my gosh.
When you look at Chuck Hellebuck, who's filming on an iPad Pro.
Yeah. Mostly because it took him that long to figure it out. Yeah.
I'm like
I love Chuck.
99 times out of 100, if you're a content creator, you don't need a 6K camera, you don't need an 8K camera, you don't need massive studio lights. Like get a decent light source and figure out how to use your camera properly, and you're going to produce amazing content. So,
show of hands. How many of us started a venture, whether you're continuing to do it or not, in a way to like basically just legitimize the expense? Whether it was I bought a 3D printer because I could start making money selling prints on online, or bought it. I wanted to pay for this camera. I mean, think about how many people start a business as a legitimate I can write this off now, right? And you want to talk about things not to do.
Yeah, like I said, don't be specific about don't be frivolous about your spending. Like buy cool stuff, make content with it, but have plans for it. Don't be frivolous with it, because I guarantee you, like like another thing I could tell my past self, money in the bank is king.
Cash, we've said it too. Cash is the lifeblood of your business. And when you run out, you die. So you have to find a way to keep it, coming in, and obviously figuring the sustainability out is interesting. Who is your hairstylist?
The whole reason my hair is up is because when I would film back when I worked for Adobe, it'd be late at night. I like to wear a hat. I loved wearing hats. And so I would wear a hat to Adobe.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I would just take it off. I'd scrub my head and be like, whatever.
There it is.
Hey, it's Joel, the 3D printing nerd, and I have this print. And so it just became a thing. It was legit. I wish there was some sort of crazy origin story here, but I just took off my hat and let my hair go like how it should be. And it just became expected. And that's legit.
It's a product of not caring.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
One more nugget of wisdom. This is from Mayhall. The longer he says he's in 3D printing and manufacturing, and I think I got to tell you this resonates with me in particular. I think this applies to any business, not just 3D printing or content creation. The longer he's doing this, he realizes the more that media is a must and not a nice to do. This is how information and sales happen and all that stuff. Would you agree with that, Joel?
1,000,000,000%. There was one time I remember years ago when I was talking to Dave at Matter Hackers.
Yeah.
And he said the goal at Matter Hackers was to have product video for every single product they offer. Their website, if you go visit a product, there should be video on that product. Because if you think about it, YouTube, it's free to host content there. You can upload terabytes of media for free that you could link to anywhere for free. Instagram, free. Snapchat, free. TikTok, free. All of these places that produce moving content. It's free. So all you have to do is find the time and the energy to produce some content about a thing you're selling, and then you can host it everywhere for free. For free. And what's great is those free places where you put it, there is discovery. So you have the option for free of getting a customer. If you post a video on YouTube for free and someone finds that video, goes to a link, clicks it, and orders something, your customer acquisition cost was nearly nothing.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to push back on that because like this is my biggest, and I've known this for forever. You're completely right, Mayhall. I'm 100% right. 1,000,000%, as Joel says.
Yep.
And yet it is the one thing, like, and Dave Gaylord is absolutely right. And I would say, like, even if you look at Matterhack, there's a ton of stuff that doesn't have video. Like, I know you do this for a living, and that it feels simple. But we've had private conversations, Joel, where it's like you said, like, it sounds like you have a starting problem. And I very much do, because at the time that I have allotted to create the content, as much as I know I need to do it and all that stuff, I'm just not in the headspace and the emotional, like, I don't want to film right now. And you mentioned, like, take away the barriers. I get that. I understand. But there is a good amount of work, even when you're doing a short on your phone, that it feels like that it's just, and I don't know if it's like, I need to reset my thought process in terms of like,
what a reasonable amount of time. If we talk about the octopus arms that James talked about, perhaps the tentacle, the arm that's doing the content creation, perhaps you're just borrowing that arm, or it's not fit. It doesn't attach to you well. So perhaps that's when you look at hiring someone. So if you come up with that job description for the content you want to make and have lined up jobs for that job to do, perhaps this is when you decide to hire someone for it.
It's something I've considered. I've talked to Andrew about this. I think
we've had many conversations.
I would imagine.
Tell me your opinion though, really quick. And I know we'll go on. I don't want to go on forever with it, but you mentioned earlier the persona. It's like a lot of what the brand is right now is still very much me. And so it's
exactly how you feel.
It's just weird if like I have somebody else trying to promote the thing when there's so much connection to like Pooch makes a rep box or whatever.
Dude,
I know. Do I need to just let that go?
No, not at all. Not at all. Here, it's so fantastic because if you hire someone who's in charge of creating the content for the platforms It could be that they write the script and say, read this, and they get a voiceover that goes on things they've shot, or they point a camera at you and say, just say these couple lines for me. So you still get that Pooch branded element to your content. Remember, the person that you're hiring to do this isn't making their content for you. They're making your content. And so it should have your face. It should have your voice. It should have your likeness. And if you hire that person as they begin to put together scripts for the content that they're going to make, you can edit and change and whatnot. But as you go on, you might trust them a little bit more, and they can just go off and just submit final
Makes
videos
a lot
to
of
you.
sense.
And then so all you have to do is similar to what David does, is watch down content and make notes. Sometimes there are no notes. Sometimes there are pages of notes. And so you just get it, right? You just take notes of things. Oh, this thing at 10 seconds I don't like, change that a little bit. Or I read the word wrong at 20 seconds. Let me reread that. So remember, don't think of hiring someone as taking a slice of your branding. It's there to make your branding pie bigger.
Yeah. Okay, that's good advice. I think my fear is the energy. Like if I'm going to be on camera, I want to have the energy. I want to be happy and excited, and I'm not feeling that all the time. Like that's
why
the
someone can tell you, so, dude. Okay,
Yeah.
when we're filming, if David and I are in the same place,
Yeah.
All right, Joel, big smiles. Yeah, smile big. All right, do it. And then if I don't have the energy, he's like, that was good. Do one more for safety. And it just means that I screwed up a little bit,
like
probably.
that sucked, dude. Yeah.
Having someone else there whose responsibility is the creative will take some of your stress down. And then at the same time, it will enable you to be more creative because they're handling this ball of it, right? They're taking a little bit of stress, this stress creative ball away from you, and then they're unraveling it. And then they're giving it back to you in a finished product.
Wise words, my friend. I love it. I would love to get to that point. It is something that has needed me. How it's been an initiative for years. It's been over a year that I've been talking to Andrew about, like, we need a better marketing media producer, whatever we want to call it. But
I mean, I have the same problems, and we've
it's finding
that at some point.
I'm so sensitive to wanting to find that right way where it just doesn't feel like salesy and forced. I want to be like, hey, this is something cool. This was a problem I had, and maybe you have it too. And it's just like the information is out there. I'm happy about it. Maybe it's not for everybody. Like, that's kind of the vibe that I like. And as you get a little bit more into the business and you have to sell and all that stuff, like, I don't want it to feel forced. And I think a lot of it is just me mentally getting to the...
It's 100% you mentally. And I promise you, finding, like, you don't think about a hire for a long time. Just try a month. Be like, I need someone for 4 weeks. I pay weekly. Here's the rate. Here's what I need.
Yeah. Digestible chunk. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Joel, you are a true mensch for just being here and spending all this time, and dude, I love getting all of this insight from you. We could do it, like I said, all day. I think we did a good job. Thank you guys in the chat, first of all, for hanging with us.
Chat.
For a solid 120. I think that's our new record, but I mean, every bit of it was gold. Every bit of it was gold.
I enjoyed it.
If not platinum. Thank you, my friend. And will you do me the kindness of taking us out with your just perfect closure?
Oh, sure. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us on this show. And if you made it this far to the end, you're awesome. Don't forget to hug each other more. Fight for a cause you believe in. Podcast all the things. And as always,
high five. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next Friday. Bye-bye.
See ya.